drink beer now. That's just. All right. Howdy, everyone. How's it going? Oh. Sock in the face.
That's good enough. Okay.
All right. All right. Howdy, everyone. How's it going? Woo! All right. So I'm gonna start with a little folk tale. Well, all right. You know, everyone has folk legends, boogeyman kind of thing you grow up with in your neighborhood. For me, and growing up in Southeast Alaska, it was Kustika, which is a devil that takes the form of a normally large otter, and they're skinwalkers. And so like growing up when I was a kid, we were told, well, you know, never follow a stranger if you meet him in the woods or anything like that. And there's woods everywhere because it's fucking Alaska. But one of the things was, and even adults would do this, is you always carry, even if you didn't smoke, like a cigarette and a lighter, and you'd always offer a cigarette to anyone you met in the woods. And if they refused, you'd just get the fuck out of there, because Kusikas are afraid of fire. And so if you ever were offered a cigarette, even if you didn't smoke, you'd accept it, and you'd light it, and then you were cool. Anyhow, so that's the kind of weird, random shit. And so Kusikas are, it's Tlingit, it's a Native Alaskan tribe, and they've just been terrorized by these creatures forever. And then like the Russians came in and they killed all the otters, and the British got involved, and the Americans, you know, for the pelts. And then it kind of Kusikas kind of died down. And then in 1750, this Tlingit village just disappeared, just 500 people gone. And the explanation for it was this mudslide, this landslide just happened and just took out the entire village, and you know, it was pretty tragic. But ever since then, the bay, Thomas Bay, that this village was in, has kind of become like the center of Kustika activity and supernatural stuff. And you can Google this shit. It's great. It's like our version of the Sasquatch. If the Sasquatch like took your skin and would lure your family members into the forest and then eat them. Anyhow. Told you that story to tell you this story. So when I was a kid, about 4, pushing 5, my family would go out and we had a cabin on this island called Admiralty, which was noted for just having a shit ton of bears on it. But we'd go out there in the winter, and my dad would trap mink and marten, which are like large weasels that you make nice coats out of. Anyhow, so about 4, my mom's there, my dad's there, and we had this dog called Finkelstein. He'd call Fink. Anyhow, so my dad would lay traps, and there's like these little, you use like herring, which is a fish, if you don't know what herring is. Anyhow, to get these, mink and marten would come, and you'd go along like kind of at the base of trees, and you'd put the trap down, and you'd put herring everywhere, and then you'd go, you know, hike another, you know, I don't know how many yards, and put another one down. You just do this for miles. And every day you'd go out and you'd check the traps. And so one day my dad's out there and he's checking the traps. And I'm at home with my mom, or not at home, I'm in the cabin with my mom, all warm and snug, wood fire, everything's good. And so my dad is out there with Fink and he's checking traps. And now occasionally what'll happen is, you know, some mink or marten gets lucky and manages to snag the herring, and the trap doesn't go off, or it does go off but it doesn't get caught. Anyhow, this day that he's out there, and then there's maybe like 3 or 4 feet of snow on the ground, and he's trudging through and checking the traps, and every trap he comes to has been triggered, and the herring's gone, but there's nothing caught. And so, you know, he resets with some herring, and he goes to the next one, and same thing at the next one, same thing at the next one, same thing at the next one. Anyhow, starting to get later in the day, and he's coming along, and he starts coming up to one of these traps, and Fink just starts freaking his shit out. Like he's like, he's just like going crazy. And you know, my dad pulls out his gun. He thinks, because it's winter and bears are hibernating, but occasionally want to wake up, and you know, if it smells herring, it might come check it out. Anyhow, so he creeps up to it, and sure enough, this one, just like all the others, snaps shut, herring's gone. And unlike the others, there's some weird tracks in the snow, like something you haven't seen before. It's like bigger than an otter, or sorry, about the size of an otter, but larger than, otter footprint larger than an otter, and it's weird. Kind of creeps them out, because again, like this is Southeast Alaska, otters have been eliminated. They've been destroyed at this point in time by trapping, and so it's kind of a little weird. The dog's acting a little weird, but he keeps going. He finishes his trap run. He gets a couple mink, couple marten, loads them on, and he starts heading back. because it's starting to get late in the day and he's got to get home before night, and it's starting to snow a little bit. Anyhow, he comes upon this line of these same footprints, and they're going south. They're going kind of perpendicular to his trail. And again, the dog kind of like smelling them and smelling stuff, and it's like it's hearing something, and it's whimpering and it's barking randomly. And so he just kind of starts following it, and he kind of loses track of time, and he all of a sudden kind of gets snapped out of it by Fink just barking up a storm again. And this is a German Shepherd. I don't know if I said that before. Finkelstein. Anyhow, and he kind of, when he snaps out of it, he realizes like he doesn't know how long he's been following these tracks, and they've been just kind of going away from where he needs to go back to the cabin, and it's starting to get dark, and it's snowing a little bit more, and so he's getting a little worried, and he's like, okay, whatever, Fink, let's just go. And so he's making his way back, and as he's going through, the snow starts picking up. The dog still, like it's like hearing something that he can't hear, and it's like kind of like barking back into the forest behind him, and he's starting to get a little creeped out, you know, like maybe there's a bear or something. And of course, he's got a rifle, he's got it out. And the snow just picking up, the wind starts going, and it's getting, he's starting to, you know, hair on the back of his neck starting to go up, like he feels like there's something following him. And Fink is again just the entire time just going from like whimpering one moment to barking randomly and like looking back and like barking at something behind him and then like running ahead and then running back to him. And it's just, he's trying to trek through, and at this point like darkness is falling. And he pulls out his flashlight, and he's going through, and he's trying to see, and the wind and the snow is kind of going. And yeah, and it just continues on. He's trying to get home. And so that's the part of the story I've been told. And this is where I actually remember. So I remember I'm sitting in the cabin, and I'm like 4, and I guess my mom, I don't remember this, but my mom was worried because darkness had fallen. You know, my dad's back by now. But anyhow, she was starting to get suited up to go outside, and the storm's kind of kicking up. She was worried maybe like falling and like knock himself unconscious or something. And anyhow, that's when we heard the first gunshot. And so she grabs her stuff, and I remember her telling me just like, I'll be right back. And she grabbed a shotgun, and she ran outside. And she said, I'll be right back. And I remember just sitting there and being like, okay. And anyhow, she's gone for a little bit, and then I heard her shotgun go off, louder, closer, and after a little bit, she comes back with my dad, and she's limping a little bit, and my dad is bleeding, his hand's bleeding, and Fink's gone. And I guess what had happened is my dad had fired the first shot because the flashlight had died, and he'd been stumbling through, and the dog was still going crazy, and he knew he was close, but he wasn't sure exactly where the cabin was in the storm, and so he fired the first shot, and my mom had fired the second to let him know where it was, and she fired the shotgun and kind of forgot how it kicks, and it hit her in the hip, and that's why she was limping. But my dad, his hand was bleeding because Fink, when he was trying to get him inside, was freaking out. He was just yelling. He was just, Arr! And he just couldn't get the dog to come any closer to the cabin. And eventually Fink just bit his hand and ripped away and ran into the storm. And anyhow, we kind of hunkered down that night and kept waiting for the dog to come back, and he never came back. And the next morning, my dad went out, and it was a sunny day, and it was clear skies and whatnot. And he trudged through back to retrace his trail trying to find Fink. And he came to where he'd run into that trail, that creature before, and he followed it down to this kind of south end of this island, and there's this clearing that has this cut tree, it's just a stump in the middle of this clearing. And he found Fink just frozen dead, just there. And he hauled him back to the cabin and kind of waited for to warm up enough that he could bury him, and he buried him. And anyhow, so 4 years later, we'd gone back, we're hunting, we're just deer hunting on Admiralty. I'm about 8 now, and we'd go over to where Fink had been buried. We hadn't really been back to Admiralty in years, and the grave where Fink had been buried had gotten completely dug up, just torn up, which we assumed was bears, because they'll sometimes smell something buried and they'll just dig it up. Then which sucked. But anyhow, we're hunting around, and we make it down to that south end of the island, and we get to that clearing, and sitting on that stump was a dog's skull that pretty sure was fake. Like, my dad had told me this story. He told me about the thing, and this sensing it coming behind him when he was in the woods with Fink freaking out. And, it was always one of those stories. But when we found that skull on that, just right where he had found Fink before, anyhow. So that's my Kustakov story.
Thank you, Marshall.